But yeah, in regards to the like the
Uh-huh.
concept of the album, I suppose it's not just a collection of like songs in the traditional sense. There's more. There is a concept part of it, even though it's not the songs themselves. I guess aren't a narrative. Through the actual tracks, there's something else that sort of supplements that. And I suppose maybe we should just have a chat about how that came about. Like to start off with, what sort of
Yeah.
instigated that? I think a part of it is to do with the fact that the music as well is really eclectic. It's not. I think some bands, and I guess maybe it's because of how we started during lockdown, and just our different influences and stuff. But some bands kind of seem to have a very. I was listening to Amy Mann basically yesterday. Have you ever seen the Dead Eyes podcast?
No, I
Heard
haven't.
of it? Right. So basically, it's a podcast about some dude who was fired from a Tom Hanks project, and then he's trying to work out why he was fired, and he wants to sort of get a meeting with Tom Hanks to sort of discuss the reasons behind why he got fired. But all the way through the podcast, Amy Mann songs are at the end of the like they're playing the podcast out at the end of each episode. And I was thinking like how there is very much an Amy Mann sound. You can hear, exactly an Amy Mann song, even by the instrumentation, like even without the music, you just know, all right, Amy Mann's voice is going to come in. And the structure of the songs and the melodies are almost the same. And I guess through Amy Mann's listeners, there's a comfort in that because they're kind of getting the same thing again and again and again. This is no shade on Amy Mann, by the way. That's not like supposed to be a dig, but that you are getting the kind of same thing again. And there's a comfort in that, isn't there? And you kind of go, right, I'm going to listen to this band and it's going to sound like this band and I'm going to feel happy because it sounds like this band. Um, but we didn't really sort of think, oh, right, what do we want to sound like? Like the old posters you get in the in the shop windows looking for a drummer, or how it used to be looking for a
Oh
guitarist
God.
and a bassist to be a band. It's going to sound like
Yeah.
this and this. We didn't
Or,
really think
or
about that.
or early this and this. Not even
Mm.
you wouldn't even get a whole band. It's like sounds like early them or
Yeah.
like latter period, whoever. Yeah, a lot of that. I
Yeah,
mean,
or
it's
this album specifically.
yeah, and because if you do talk to people, that's what they say, don't they? Specifically, they might say, I really like this album by them, but not anything else.
Yeah.
And I guess what we were trying to do with all these exhibits, as they're called on the album, which tied in with the British Museum idea, but I think we're probably going to do that. We're always going to do this in some way, were some motifs,
Mm.
I guess you call them, and not that the music's necessarily of each one is all that much like each other, like a different one. But well, we got a pretty good review the other day, I think, a quite thoughtful one, which was with regard to the Trojan Horse single, which was it's not like the British Museum,
Mm.
but we can feel the band's DNA, something
Yeah.
like that. And I liked that. Thought that was pretty good and thoughtful, and I think it's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the very beginning, I wasn't so sure if that would translate, if that makes sense, because of everything from like my perspective. I was like, oh, this is completely different to that, and this is completely different to that, and this is completely different to that. Um, and I was not worried, but it was a thought in my mind, and I'm sure I spoke to you about this, just saying, like, what's going to tie everything together? Like, how do we sort of make sense of all of this sort of these disparate influences that we have in these songs? Because I never wanted to be tied down to, oh, let's just make a song that sounds like the last one that we did, just so people can, so it's palatable. I just think it's boring.
Well, we've talked about this a lot, haven't we? And we both have very wide taste in music.
Mm.
And I could equally be in a metal band as a folk band, if you were doing something completely traditional with no problem, electric blues or complete acoustic folk or whatever you want, really. you know, there are limits to that of my knowledge, but it's not because I don't like things. And
Yeah.
I played for someone a couple of years ago, and they were having a little bit of a change of direction, having a few more guitars. And I know the main track I didn't make the cut of the album, pretty much because it was different.
Yeah.
And well, that's what they told me anyway. Maybe it was just rubbish, but that it didn't fit. And I think the artist liked it, but the producer didn't, thought it jarred whilst listening to it. And that got me thinking, I like albums where the songs are different. I don't think you don't have to have every song like the last. And
Mm.
maybe you think, well, it's too much of a departure for the audience because they only like a certain type of music, but that's not giving them much credit, really. I don't
I
think
don't think it
that's not.
does. Yeah, yeah, you're
Mm.
right. You're absolutely right. It's like it's almost like insulting in a way, isn't it? Just by kind of going, look, they're only listening to you because of these four chords that you played then, so just keep
Yeah,
churning out the same stuff. And I just
you
think
did it
that's
again, and you did it again, and you did it
yeah.
again. And obviously, if you've got a bit of a formula for a banger of, you know, I like AC/DC, who've got a formula,
Mm.
you know, and I like bands of that ilk with a 3 or 4 chord formula.
Hmm.
But it doesn't mean I wouldn't have liked it if they'd done something else, or maybe they didn't feel comfortable doing something else, or maybe they didn't feel the need,
Yeah,
and it's just
which is
we're happy.
fine. I mean,
We're
that's
happy.
entirely up to them, isn't it?
I'm happy in the pocket, you know,
Yeah,
and as we both know from our live experiences, there's nothing like the fun of playing live with a relatively simple song because you
yeah,
can once you're happy, you can really go for it. And
yeah.
Luke and I
And
used to do this all the time. I'm saying this
you
to
feel
imagine.
comfortable, don't you? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
To
fuck,
this
nobody,
third person who's
to nobody. Yes, to
to
Terry
this
Wogan. Or asked about this.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
of course. So and then you're happy because you basically know because you're prepared.
yeah,
And if you're prepared, you can relax. And if you can relax, you can play well. And if you play
yeah.
well, you have a good time. And that's
And everyone feels safe as well in the band because they'll also on the flip side, sometimes, we've played in a band in the past where sometimes we just have people come in and jam with us, like on like live during the performance. And sometimes it was a very uncomfortable experience. And then everything starts to unravel and everyone starts to feel tight because no one quite knows,
yeah.
ugh, you
I
know,
mean, a classic. I don't want to go on about the past particularly, but just one particular example was
come
I
on.
remember the drummer shouting, "Jimmy, where's the one?" So we'd lost the one of the 1, 2, 3, 4. So it
Brilliant.
was just things happening, and no one knew the start or the end or the middle of 4
That's
beats was
hilarious.
just because it's
That's
so loud and
hilarious.
so chaotic, and
Of course. And then
uh,
once you start adding other things into the mix,
and they start playing an offbeat to try and make it
oh
interesting.
God. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Complicating something very simple. But
yeah,
yeah, I suppose we kind of, and again, I think because we've done that and we've got that, and we can always kind of lean on the structural things, like the things that are more formulaic in our lives, be that through music and other things outside of music. I think it was nice for this project for us to be able to just do whatever the hell we wanted to do, with no restrictions. I guess
yeah,
lockdown, kind of the restrictions of lockdown, made us want to be unrestricted creatively. Is that fair, or is that some sort of like sort of
100%. And
misleading?
also, for once, you're not thinking, "How's this?" I wasn't thinking, "What's this going to be like live?" So
Yeah.
because no one's doing anything live whatsoever anywhere, and also the idea. Sorry, my cat's just decided to get involved.
Bring the cat in. The cat's
Put
going to
in,
get viewers. No one's going
put
to
in. You
watch
ready?
us, but now there we
Yep.
go.
He's up. He likes it
Oh.
too much. He just likes getting my leg.
Oh, pud.
There he is. There's the lad. Okay, he's going to stay for as long as he wants to stay.
Fair enough. Fair
So
enough.
during lockdown, I think they he's up. You weren't thinking about that. It was normal to do stuff online like we're doing now, and then suddenly the our physical distance didn't seem as much of a hindrance,
Mm.
whereas at, at the start, you might think, well, but once everyone's in the same boat, then you go, oh well, I can do anything.
Yeah.
I can do anything, and I'm not worried about how it's going to go. I'm not worried about how it can be reproduced, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, and you may not do anything with it ever.
Exactly. I think that
And
was the thing,
we
wasn't it?
weren't.
We weren't even thinking about where it might go with regards to someone picking it up and it becoming its why, the vinyl or an album or anything like that. We were just making shit because we wanted to make shit, basically.
Yeah, exactly, and therefore, like, the concepts, I guess, with the album, when we initially were writing, we weren't thinking about an album. We were just writing
No.
some songs and enjoying ourselves and all that. Creative, put in the microphone, um, doing some stuff, and then as it went on, we thought, right, well, what an album in a way, and we've just been talking about this with our record label, is that what's an album to people? Like, if you go on Spotify and you hear of an artist, what do you do? Do you go to best of? Do you go to an album? Do you look at the top 6 tracks? A new track has dropped. Do you know what album it's even on?
Yeah, yeah.
And do you care? And should you care? And is that? I mean, it's definitely an outmoded thing, because that was how you got 40, 45 minutes of music. Now that's not how the majority of people get it. And we know that doing the vinyl is not a folly. It's a thing we're doing, but it's not essential. It's not essential to get the
No, we
music
could have
out.
just put it on on Spotify or whatever you, and just
Straight,
go
could have
and
gone straight to
go and listen
digital.
to whatever in whatever order you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we could have done that, and then I think we thought, or between us, we sort of thought that how can we make it interesting? How can it not just be a load of songs in one place?
Mm.
It's 8 songs you like, or 10 songs that you think that view. You audition your songs, you write your songs, you do what you're doing, you pick your 10 best, and then you whack them on the album, and you find out an order that seems to flow. But I think we tried. I know we're not unique in this at all, in what we've done in terms of tying it together with ideas, having interludes, having stuff. I think Jethro Tull, Bungle in the Jungle, one song on 2 sides or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost bang on about Jethro Tull. It's because there is the most ridiculous example of whatever you're thinking about. And so why not? And initially, I'm glad they're all going to be out electronically. They're all going to be out digitally, all these little bits and bobs. The only negative, I suppose, is because of the Spotify algorithm. If you're on their algorithm and there's just one little weird bit in between
People be like, what?
That's your bit, that's your chance. And it was that. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. But no, I think it was, if people, obviously, to buy something, to physically have something, which again, as you say, is rare for the most part these days. For us to even endeavor to do that, I sort of felt that we had to do something that kind of made that experience worth having, not, and particularly, as we're not that well known. So, why take a chance on, spending, because it's expensive as well, but, buying vinyl now, and considering the other side of things is getting your music for free. So I sort of felt there was a responsibility almost, if we were going to bother with the hard copies, to make it just you've got your songs, but like something that people will go back to, they'll listen to, they'll put it back on and kind of find something slightly different each time they listen to it.
Yeah. And what we initially talked about, which just isn't feasible, I don't think. But I think part of it also was the idea that you put on at least one side. Like we talked to that guy when we talked to Dr. Dog in Colorado, was it? We talked about this, and it was, you'd at least listen to the whole side, which is what, 20 minutes, if not the whole album. And sometimes if you bought it that week and you've only got limited options and how many you can buy in a month or whatever, you might listen to it straight. You might just go
Mm.
again, might just go again. And a track you hadn't really liked at the beginning, you come to like
Yeah.
later. You get into this and into that, and you go, oh, I'm really into side two at the moment. And so I think we were trying to have a little bit of that about it, where something you'd leave on.
Yeah.
And this isn't to try and cheat the algorithm or any of that sort of concept. It's not anything like that. It's just, or particularly to sell vinyl. It's just, if you're going to bother,
Yeah.
and if you're going to pay money when you can get it for free, we wanted to have that there as something worthwhile for you, as
Yeah.
opposed to just the digital thing. I mean, it's just an inconvenient version of digital, isn't it? If that's all you've done,
Yeah.
it's like, what is the point? What
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess there's, people will talk about sound quality and how they like to listen to, but again, those people are few and far between. Most people nowadays, the vast majority, are streaming their music. Um, so yeah, I mean, that was the kind of the thought process behind it, and then there was the what do we do? How do we do it? What do we do? And I think it started, but correct me if I'm wrong, with the title, the British Museum, wasn't it? I think that was the first. Then because then the exhibits and having things between, and I mean,
Mm.
there were obviously prior to like coming up with names and things like that, there were sort of the interludes, the these sorts of things floating around, weren't there?
Yeah,
Of
definitely. And
ideas.
I'm going to try and be a bit more succinct, but I think I was waffling then because the cat was on me
Ah,
being weird.
waffle away.
I think we had always intended, because we didn't think that they put the whole album out digitally, and so you think, if you've made the effort to go and buy the vinyl, thank you very much, and for it sort of in gratitude of that, we'll make it worth your while by having the album tied together with bits and with these interludes, as we called them at the time. I sort of like
Mm,
folder interludes. And then when the British Museum track got named, I think, and then we thought, hang on, this is where we're going with this. And or that got fully involved.
mm,
And all the parts of that sort of started to come together, like, okay, got it now, got it now.
yeah.
And then,
Because the interesting thing about British, sorry to cut in on you,
no, no.
the British Museum itself, interestingly enough, is almost kind of a musical journey in terms of sort of its sections. And then
Yeah.
that was called the British Museum. And then we sort of felt, oh, wait a minute, the album songs are again slightly different and disparate, almost like our own little exhibits in the museum if we were to curate the museum of small black arrows or the
Yeah.
museum of music that has inspired us. And then that then went, oh, okay, well, wait a minute, what if the album itself was a a museum in one way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
How would this album be reflected in that way?
Because there's an initial political point on the
Yeah,
track, which is pretty straightforward in the British Museum. It's pretty explicit in the lyrics, really.
yeah.
Um, you know, so that sort of came together through that track, and then once you think, I mean, I like. So it's a shame the band's not called the British Museum, really, because I do like those bands with debut album. Like
Yeah,
Iron Maiden. The album's called Iron Maiden, and the
yeah,
song that
yeah,
is on that
yeah,
album,
yeah.
self-titled album with self-titled song. We've not quite managed that, but so that all made sense, really, and I really like that song, and I think it's a fitting end to the album.
Mm.
Um, it's sort of the final track, if you like, and
Kind of ties up everything that sort
ties
of
it up.
happened beforehand, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other bits, I think anyone who's, well, you've not heard it yet because it's not out yet. That's on the 31st, midnight of the 30th, whichever way you
Yeah,
want to
get the
look at it.
plug in now.
Yeah. Don't tell anyone. is the upgrade element is there. It's a sort of idea where you're looking back at now-ish, or you're in the future looking back at the past and seeing what isn't there anymore, and
Mm.
some of the things are things that are here now. and that's kind of what we, and there is a political angle to that as well, and there is a kind of uh, not whimsical, what's the word, sort of imaginary, it's an imaginary sort of flight of fancy, if you like,
Mm,
into what could have just gone and nobody remembers it anymore. That's very, very common now. So you'll hear that, and I hope you'll find them interesting and not just
mm,
distract from the more main songs, if you like. And I think we both like getting our teeth into those because they were not a songy, if you like. You're not worried about how we're going to get to the chorus.
mm.
You're not worried about does your chorus rhyme or any of that stuff. There's it's kind of interesting stuff, but hopefully doesn't outstay its welcome. And the more straightforward songs you'd have on the radio, which I'm sure these will not be on the radio unless someone who's an idiot genius decides to play the album in full, which could happen.
It could.
Please, could happen. But hopefully that'll seem like it's enhancing it, not detracting from it. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that's obviously we don't want to give too much away about the narrative and stuff like that. So I sort of feel like I think we should kind of leave that there. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
Have you got any thoughts on the sort of technical side of creating? Because there is a difference between the songs that you would say were more kind of genuine sort of pop kind of songs, I suppose, or as you mentioned a second ago, sort of like radio songs that would make their way onto a radio show, and then the interludes in between, which sometimes are a little bit more. I think you used the word whimsical before, and I think in a way there is a sort of
Yeah.
whimsy to some of them, and some of them are a little bit kind of more emotionally charged, and some just sort of almost serve the narrative, that's sort of the loose sort of narrative that runs through the album, and they have different functions and different features, but they were recorded differently as well. And you had quite a lot of input into that
Yeah.
sort of going through, so it might be worth you explaining that.
Yeah. Well, with regard to recording those, they were done much more sort of going away and coming back with them almost finished, really, as opposed to we collaborated a lot more in the studio over the more sort of straightforward 4 minute pop songs that are on there. These are shorter. And for me, they tapped into my personal interest of sort of soundtrack type things, which is you're creating a mood, and with a song you're on a journey. You've kind of a song's more like a play with acts or something where
Mm,
you've got to get from one bit to the other. You've got to justify why you've got there. So in a way, they're kind of more throwaway ideas, but they can also be more moving in that they don't have to follow the structure. They can be more interesting because
mm,
they don't have to follow the structure. So, for instance, if you were to watch a 30 or some segment of a film that you really love, but it might only be a 30-second segment, but you're creating a feeling for 30 seconds as opposed to a journey, really. And so I think songs, at least, they're going to have a little bit of up and down journey, even if it's a verse and a chorus. Whereas these interludes are more, they kind of stay what they are. They might build to what they are, but they kind of stay what they are. And the point is that it's you're in that zone of feeling whatever that is.
mm.
So it's a slightly different way of writing. It's more sort of composition, really, as opposed to songwriting.
Yeah,
And you could sort of layer it up and get interesting and go with, try out different instruments and try out different sounds and, build and get it going and take them away and have a bit of fun with it in a way. Whereas with a song, you're always worried that you're ruining it or you're taking away from it or you've put too much in, or I quite like the freedom of it. I
yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was good, and it was nice to sort of like, because I think that the interludes, or at least a few of the interludes, were kind of, you'd create something and you send it to me and go, oh, how do you think this sounds? What do you think about this? Blah 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 blah. And then they kind of informed the narrative, because there was a script written for the
Mm.
album, which is different. It's not something that it's not something that like I'd ever done sort of with music before. Obviously, I've written lyrics and things along those lines, but there's almost a kind of beginning, a middle, and an end to the whole album as a whole. There's a structure to the narrative of that, which isn't, I wouldn't say it's too explicit or necessarily on the nose, but if you pay attention, and I think it's going to be on, second listen, third listen, or what have you, where you start to pick out the things that are kind of going in underneath the interludes in a way, which again we've called exhibits on the album. And it was interesting, I think, you giving so I've just got a little thing come up on the screen. It was interesting you kind of giving the soundtrack to that and then working out sort of script bits for the sound, which I think would usually happen the other way around, wouldn't it? It'd be like, here's the script, here's the finished film, or at least a rough cut. Go and stick some, go and stick some music on
Sorry to cut
to.
out. Yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
Sorry
Sorry,
to
my
cut out.
my signal's a bit shit. But yeah, yeah, it's just come up now. Your internet connection is unstable. Um,
Winging it a little,
yeah,
which not winging it in terms of effort and so on, but in how anything was ever going to turn out. I think if when a couple of years ago when we started this thing, you'd said right by May 2024 this is going to be out. You can plan and you better pull your socks up and you better do this, that, and the other. We would have, but we
yeah,
didn't know that. And we didn't know lots of things until later on, and it grew and grew and grew. And I think we could honestly say we just did the best we could all the way through
yeah, yeah.
with the information we had and the time we had and
Yeah,
studio time we had and all
that's
that,
it.
which I think that's made this interesting and made it worth listening to. And I think it
Yeah,
makes it stand out a little bit. It's not, we've said this many times, or I have, because I repeat myself a lot in my old age, that it's not four guys with guitars in a van. It just isn't that. And
yeah.
the album's not that either.
No, not at all. I think there's something more to it, and I think it's like I think without all of the, I say hurdles, let's say that we had to kind of make our way over and walls we had to climb in order to get to where we are. And again, like this is just some of it's just being unlucky, some of it's just not knowing, what path we were going to walk down and things along those lines. Um, but because of that, I sort of feel like the album has become the thing that it's become, and it wouldn't have beforehand. And I think it's probably at least more interesting because of that, and that's great. And I think that we could never have foreseen where it was going to go and what was going to become of it. And I'm really sort of I'm pleased to sort of put it out there, if that makes sense. And I'm interested to see what people think about the more unconventional aspects as well.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think under other circumstances, if we'd not been in lockdown, it might have taken us the same amount of time, but we would have done two albums before this to
yeah,
find out what we were trying to do.
yeah,
And they would have been more conventional. I'm not saying they wouldn't have been good. I just think they would have been more conventional. And this
mhm.
is, I think we found the sound, and it seems like, like as I said with that review, that's your DNA. I'm happy with that, and I'm happy to. I know where to start now. Whereas it can be that, where do you start?
Yeah, yeah,
That's the tough thing.
yeah.
I think it's
No,
tough
but
for everyone. You
no,
just, what do you do? Copy your influences.
there you go. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? I was listening to a little clip that someone had put up from Noel Gallagher the other day, and obviously we all know the influences that Oasis have, and they've, it's not, I'm not sort of like, again, this is not disparaging. Noel Gallagher makes no bones about where
No,
he's
no.
picked up his songs, but he said something in an interview which I found absolutely hilarious. He says, um, "I'm gonna rip off songs, and you're gonna fucking buy it. So shut the
Well,
fuck up." So what does it
yeah,
matter? Do you
man.
know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Hey,
And
look, my probably favorite Oasis song is "Cigarettes and Alcohol," which is pretty much just a straight T-Rex song.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yet, if I'm in a pub and that comes on and I've got a pint, I'm happy. I like it. It's
there you
great.
go.
Have a game
There
of
you go.
pool, and nod my head to the riffs. Cool. It's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. That's it. And again, absolutely no issue with that. And maybe the next album we'll go, we'll actually our influences might be more
Start doing that.
obvious. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll just
just go
and why the
backwards.
hell not? There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Stop
I'm not
being.
going to write anything off, but yeah, for this
Try to be
one,
clever.
I think we've been a little bit. I think we've just tried to kind of just do something that's our own thing and stand by it, and I fully do.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Me too.
you
Me
know,
too. And if anyone's interested, anyone who's shown any interest, anyone who's listened to anything, we are really appreciative. Honestly, we
mm,
really are. It's not easy, and we didn't fully understand how difficult it's going to be. Really, because obviously you think you've done your thing, you're happy enough with it to put it out, and then you think, okay, that's that, and then everyone's just going to like it. But there's such a huge sea of things out there.
yeah.
It's really hard to get heard. So anyone who's bothered to listen, anyone who's reposted or done anything like that, we really appreciate it. Honestly, thanks a lot.
Yeah, actually, you raise a good point there because you're right, and I think that's why bands do maybe, go right. This is what I'm playing. It's the Lars, and I know that people like the Lars, and then I'm going to make a thing that's pretty much the Lars, and then I'll chuck it out there, and I know that there's an audience, and there's an audience that are going to go, I love the Lars and I love this. And that's fair enough. And that's a good way of doing it. But we've not done that. And I think that the people that have come and listened to us are giving us a chance. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, man.
We're not going, it's like this. So give it, listen, you've got to work maybe a little bit harder to sort of get us. And that's our fault for not kind of maybe being so derivative or whatever. Yeah, whatever. So thank you for that, I guess, because
Yeah,
it's not like we're just going here, guys. If you like the Ramones, check us out.
yeah, because that's the trouble is with that. You can do that if you want, and you might get the Ramones fans thinking you're okay, but that's all you'll get really is or you end up on a kind of cover circuit type thing, which are big now,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
touring. Being tribute acts are big, and then the original acts are still big. They haven't gone away.
yeah,
So how do you find a way in? How do you attract anyone? It's not easy because live people tend to like what they already know.
yeah,
They want
yeah.
to
You want to
sing
be able to
along to a
sing along,
song they
don't
already
you,
know.
and have a dance.
And yet you go home and you hear something. You want to hear something new. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's not easy to balance that. But again, thanks very much to anyone who's bothered. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Awesome.